And now I'd like to invite Reverend Dr. Ruth Miller to present today's message for celebrating Yule, Saturnalia, 12th night, Hanukkah, and more. Oh, kids,
That's lovely, thank you. Oh my, it's always wonderful to be able where I can see all of you. And I appreciate your putting up with my sitting in front because it helps me connect with you, and that's very important to me. Welcome to the 5th day of Christmas, the 5th day of Hanukkah, and the 4th day of Saturnalia, and on and on and on. This is the time all over the Northern Hemisphere where people are celebrating the light. Because, well, in ages past, people engaged in what anthropologists call sympathetic magic, which is to say, what you want more of, make sure you've got plenty of. And so we have citrus fruit. Isn't it interesting that citrus is ripe in December? I always thought that was marvelous. And we have gold and silver balls everywhere, and we have lights in the candles and lights on the trees, and we have lights everywhere we can imagine, and sometimes it's overwhelming. And still, what we're aiming for is to recognize that even in the darkest times, even when the sun is not even appearing as a sliver in the night sky, light remains. Now, some of you may recall that the ancient Persians, and this is Byzantine, not Persian, and thank you, Catherine, for this, that the ancient Persians and even modern Persians honor fire, honor the flame as the symbol of light. They honor the sun as the physical metaphor for the true light. And those of you who are aware of an ancient pharaoh called Akhenaten and were taught that he worshiped the sun, not so. The sun was the metaphor for the light that is eternal everywhere, always. So, has anyone here been in Alaska or above in the Arctic Circle during December? All right. So, yeah, and so you've been there when there was nothing coming up on that southern horizon, right? For 3 days. 3 days, usually between the 20th and the 22nd is when it is definitely gone, every December. We had 10 years between 2012 and 2022 where it was always on December 21st, but now it moves around a bit. And that's when the Earth's axis compared to the sun is tilted furthest away in the northern hemisphere. And the sun does not even show its tiniest little presence on that day. For 3 days, solstice, sun standing, sticere. Sun standing for 3 days. And at the end of the 3rd day, there is the tiniest little sliver that just kind of peeks over the edge and goes away. And this is the sun of the sun, the day star, the new child being born on the 3rd morning. Isn't that interesting? Actually, the 4th morning after 3 days, which happens to be most years, December 25. And was celebrated for thousands of years before anyone that we would call Jesus was on the planet. Because in the Northern Hemisphere, if you want more light, you have to honor the light. And when the light is beginning to appear, you realize that all that has been is done. And something entirely new is coming into being. Entirely unborn coming into birth. Something that is so much greater than any human activity. that it must be called divine. And I happened to listen to Greg Braden talking to Unity at Santa Fe on December 22, and he pointed out that divinity has nothing to do with theology. Divinity is the quality of being more than normally human. Isn't that interesting? So the divinity in each and every one of us is awakened with that tiny little sliver of sun just peeking up over the horizon on the 25th of December. We have seen the star in the east. Yes? So, for thousands of years, and probably hundreds of thousands of years, humanity that didn't have TVs, didn't have cell phones, didn't have internet, didn't have any of these things to entertain them with, had the stars and the night sky and firelight. And that was it. To honor and recognize and realize that as above, so below, as within, so without. That what I see out there is showing me what is in here, and if I can connect with that, if I can feel the shifts and the changes in the world around me, I can allow myself to become more fully who I truly am. And I can allow that divine spark within me to be like that little tiny sliver of sun on the 25th, and a little more on the 26th, and a little more on the 27th, for 12 days. And on the 12th day, it is a full orbing sun. The 12 days of Christmas start December 25. I had to educate someone on that yesterday. That's not the 12 days before the 25th. It starts December 25th as the sun gets fuller and fuller and fuller in those places where it was absent on the solstice. It also happens to have been in the Mediterranean area, happens to be in the Mediterranean area, seed planting time. And actually out here in the Willamette Valley, this is seed planting time. The fields have been plowed and they're planting the grasses, the winter wheats, throughout Oregon. This is seed planting time. And so there is a festival in Rome for the god and goddess of the seeds and the harvest, which interestingly happens to be Saturn and Op. Op is Saturn's wife in the Roman pantheon. Now, what we need to understand about the Roman pantheon is it is a conglomerate of all the individual, unique god-goddess presences in each of the parts of the empire that have been absorbed into Rome. So Saturn was a Greek presence. Saturn in the Greek tradition is the one who killed off the old Titans and actually made it possible for humans to form on the planet. And Saturn is celebrated at this time because it's seed planting time. It's the ending of Kronos, old father time. Remember the New Yorker cartoons? And then little baby with the new year. That's the same process, the same process. So this 12 days of Christmas was the 12 days of Saturnalia for much of Greek and Roman history, where everything shut down. Everything was reversed. Everything was done weirdly. And if you saw, how many seen Shakespeare's Twelfth Night? This is a literate audience. That is the last night before Epiphany. That is the 12th day of Christmas. That is the remainders of the ancient Roman festival Saturnalia. And then during Saturnalia, there's all kinds of yellow and silver balls and citrus fruits and greens brought into the house and candles lit, all during Saturnalia. Isn't that interesting? And then this time goes on, the slaves get to be treated as the masters of the house for at least one night, usually December 23, sometimes December 17. But there is that time of recognizing that our rules are temporary. They're made up. They are not real. They are what has been the form of our life and doesn't have to be anymore. So we have to recognize that in the Roman times, what were called slaves were really family members and could be freed with no effort at all. They could even buy their own freedom because they could earn money. But in that world, the people who had no power were given power during Saturnalia. And people would run through the streets with virtually nothing on. And they would show up for dinner with no togas on, just the stele. And they would have wonderful times. So, the 12 days of Christmas, which brings us to a song that we all know, some of. Right? So, I don't know, shall we try it? Starting with the 12th day of Christmas? 12 pipers piper, those are bagpipes. 11 drummers drumming. 10 lords of leading. 9 ladies. Okay, let's try. 12 pipers piping, 11 drummers drumming, 10 lords a leaping, 9 ladies dancing, 8 maids a milking, 7 swans a swimming, 6 geese a laying, 5 golden rings, 4 calling birds, 3 French hens, 2 turtle doves, and a partridge in a pear tree. Oh, well done. Yeah, you've got it, you've got it. So the pear tree, it turns out, has been for thousands of years dedicated to the mother goddess presence in almost every culture around Europe. So the pear tree was recognizing the source of the life, and the partridge was actually whatever you wanted it to be. In the Catholic, in some translations of that song, they say the partridge in the pear tree is Jesus on the cross. Yeah. But in others, it is the presence of the divine self in the mothering tree, the pear tree. So a sacred tree with our divine self, a mothering presence. Yes? Yes. Yes. Now you all have already heard the whole thing on Hanukkah, so I won't go into that. But really, it is a wonderful opportunity to celebrate the light in the heart of the winter. We use whatever we can to explain it, and it works. In my family, unfortunately, the hostess had COVID on the first night of Hanukkah, so they're planning latkes on New Year's Eve, and that's going to be their celebration of Hanukkah. But all of my Jewish family in New Mexico and Israel is celebrating. They're on WhatsApp. They're in a group. It's marvelous. It's like they're never, they're all over the place. Paris, Italy, Israel, New Mexico, and they're always connected. And Hanukkah is one of the ways they do that. Yeah. That's where I was last year. Yeah. Family connection. That's the other piece of this season. Feeling and knowing we are not isolated and alone. Even on the darkest nights of the year, even on those long, cold winter nights, when it feels like we ought to be isolated and alone in this world, realizing through the presence of the light and through all the ways we can connect, that we are connected. We are interconnected. We can't not be connected. We can't be separated. We can pretend we are, and we can suffer for that. A lot of us do. But really, for me, I like to spend most of Christmas Eve up with the lights on in the dark. Last Christmas Eve, I was driving for 3 hours after 8 p.m., and that was marvelous. And then I got into my home, and I got connected with everybody around my home. And then I put them all to bed. And then I stayed up to be in this presence and feel all of the souls all over the world. All over the world. Feeling the connection, the oneness, the wholeness that we are. That light that we share that is called the sun. That is the light in our hearts. That is the reason we sang extra verses of Spirit of Light. It's here, always. When we're in the silence, we can feel that. And there's another thing that happens in December most of the world, and that is an incredibly wonderful presence that was on the planet about 600 years before Jesus. Is celebrated in December, and it's called Bodhi Day. Bodhi is another term for Buddha, Bodhisattva. And on Bodhi Day, we honor the light that that person became for all of us. And I just so appreciate that I can go into almost any tradition around the world and experience this. Now we're also in the middle of something else, another light-based service and celebration called Kwanzaa. Has anyone participated in any part of Kwanzaa?
Ever?
Oh, Hans. We need to do something about that. So in the 1960s, someone became aware that the American practice of Christmas and New Year's was kind of European-centric. And that there was a significant portion of the country that were African-centric. And so this marvelous guy sat down and pulled out some words in Swahili and looked at the fact that in Africa at about this time, it's an harvest festival. And so he created Kwanzaa. And it starts on the day after Christmas, December 26th, and it ends on New Year's Eve, the 31st. And every day is a candle being lit, and each day is a different term. Emoji, right? Imana. These terms are specific terms relating to qualities that we all wish we had more of. We had more hope, more faith. One day is working together cooperatively. There's a single word for that. Wow, right? And so every day there is whatever the family's practice has become. And we're now, believe it or not, 60 years into people practicing Kwanzaa. So almost 3 generations have grown up with this. And I think we're going to see more of that as we go forward. So if you can possibly get something on Kwanzaa some year, that would be beautiful. Literally everybody in New Mexico, Shalako, the Kachina spirits are coming into the community in the dark nights of December. And there are bonfires lit and dancing. Shalako is the 9-foot tall one that kind of does this with the bit, yeah. And one of the interesting things that I've acquired, actually through Nin, who used to attend here, is a female Shalako. And I had never seen such a thing. But you can, yeah, so now there is this more of a mixing in the in the peoples of indigenous countries as well, indigenous communities. So Shalako happens in Zuni, and some of the Hopi Kachinas are coming in now, and there is much dancing and laughter and good food and community sharing. So yes, the Yule tide, good Yule, has been around forever, continues to be around forever. Take your choice. I don't care which one you celebrate them all. Honor this light-filled being that you are, that we all are, and allow the appearance of darkness to be dissolved, as it must be whenever we turn on the light. Thank you very much.